shirt with its accomplished
That's right.
Foster Traverse.
Okay, so I just read this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Shirt.
And then she added this.
Okay, council, we'll begin our meeting. Let the record show that all of council are present. The first meeting, or the first item on our agenda, in fact, the only item on our agenda, as we have pulled consent agenda item A, approval of Stern Lake dredging, that's been pulled and will be presented at another time. We will move to the public hearing and second reading on ordinances. The ordinance on second reading is amending the 2011 budget. City Attorney?
An ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending ordinance number 26, series of 2010, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Jefferson, and Douglas, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2011, and ending December 31, 2011.
Okay, this ordinance is some housekeeping. The Consolidated Special Revenue Fund includes the Wildlife Fires Fund, and throughout the year, we deploy personnel to serve on wildlife fires within Colorado. These expenditures are reimbursed to the city after deployment, and the amounts vary each year. In the 2011 budget, we put $100,000. However, deployment reimbursements amounted to approximately $325,500. This request is for the additional $225,500. The other is a Consolidated Special Revenue Fund for the South Metro Drug Task Force. We received about $218,000 from Arapahoe County in 2011 to fund a member of the South Metro Drug Task Force for 2 years, along with a vehicle lease. This appropriation is for that portion of these funds that were spent in 2011. Do I have, it's a special, or it's a public hearing? Is anybody? Okay.
Paul?
Mayor, will you move to open the public hearing?
Can I have a motion?
No, I think you.
Did I?
You moved.
So moved.
Okay,
To open the public hearing?
second?
Okay, public hearing's open. We have no one on the roster to speak, if anybody in the
Excuse
audience.
me.
You need
You
to
Pardon
need
me?
to vote on that.
Oh, we need to,
Vote on opening the public
oh,
meeting.
jeez. I've had too many meetings.
There you go.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Unanimously, anonymous. Yeah. Where's Wendy?
Yeah.
Okay, public hearing's open. We have no one on the roster. If there's anyone in the audience that'd like to come down and speak, you can do so now. Okay, seeing no one, may I have a motion to close?
Mayor, I move that the public hearing be closed and that the budget amendment ordinance amending the 2011 annual appropriation bill increasing total expenditures by $261,500 be approved on second and final reading. Order published by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, and Municipal Courthouse and the City of Littleton website, and that the council president is hereby authorized to affix her signature thereto.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council to approve. Council ready to a vote?
Discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my God. Any discussion on this?
Actually,
Bruce?
just to reiterate, we brought this up on first reading, but this is money that comes directly to the city and is not subject to apportionment back to the fire partners, as I understand it. So it's 100% city money. And Doug Farman is, yes, please, City Finance Director. Doug.
Yes, that is correct. Both of these programs are actually 100% reimbursable to the city, so that is correct. And that portion is outside the fire contract scope of work.
Perfect. Thank you.
And all of these represent items that are funding that's come from a different source. It's just moving them to the point where they're in the appropriate spending budget section.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the amending the 2011 budget. Votes, please. Jim?
Sorry.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Bruce?
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that we go into executive session following the conclusion of the study session for a conference with the city attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific questions related to liability and contract issues under Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402 sub 4 sub B.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to go into exec.
Could we just
Takes 5
clarify
votes.
for people who haven't been following along for the last few hours that we,
Well, I was going to do that after.
okay, well, okay.
Okay, let's take 5 votes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Before we adjourn, for the clarification, we are now moving actually into the second portion of our study session, where we will continue discussion on our council protocol. Let's see, we're in our legislative rules and procedures, and we will go until concluded or until 10 o'clock, whichever comes first, and then we will step into exec session. This meeting's adjourned.
Cheers.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Thank Yeah, hurry. You've got 2 minutes. Phil got 3 and he left a minute ago.
Yeah.
So we
Oh, we might.
the recording is set up.
It's set up next door? Great. Figured it was. I had to confirm.
It's done. Put done here,
It's one.
which takes no effort. Excuse me. Nicely done, Phil. I was just under 2 minutes.
I told you, I asked for 3 though.
I know.
He may not have done it, you don't know. May have looked at the time and just dashed back in.
Yeah. Okay, we're on.
You put six.
Yeah, take 2. I wrote on one that I didn't write on.
But we could do 5 to 9,
Yeah. All this spread, taking up a lot.
because it's not a regular meeting, right? It's just a study session.
It's a regular meeting.
It's a regular meeting,
Regular meeting.
so 5, so 4 to 7. Okay. All right. Where's, so now we lost Jerry too?
Jerry's looking for his phone. He's found his phone.
He's
on
found
his
his
way
phone.
back.
He won't feel naked.
Yeah, unless the phone's off.
I got that. I don't. Yeah, I brought it with me.
I'm going to go ahead and get started. I asked the mayor just for a few more housekeeping items that I wanted to, just miscellaneous things to bring you up to speed on. Councilman Cole had asked a while ago about periodic noise on Channel 8 that it made a buzzing noise, and so we brought the company in. They've looked at it, and what they think it is actually is the radio frequency from dispatch that periodically makes it through all the way over. So there's not a whole lot we can do about it right now unless we lead line the wall type of thing. But they did look at some equipment, they replaced a few things, but I think we're just going to have to live with it to the extent. But if we can all remember to turn off our phones, and remind others to turn off their phones. I
When
think
they go, they have to go all the way off, because if
Yeah,
they're
it's-
on and they vibrate, it has the same effect. So they
Yeah,
have
the
to go
only-
dead.
Yep, dead or at least airplane mode, so there's no external views of the world if you want to look at your calendar or something. And then a couple of you have voiced concern about the chairs in the council chambers, and so we are going to have the chairs, we looked at them, and there's at least 4 of them that don't operate properly. The little compression thing is either broken, or I think Councilman Beckman had a few pieces that fell off, and so we're going to have the chairs cleaned and fixed. And then,
And you're
What's
gonna
that?
have an eject button.
yes, we're going to have, we're going to insert some electrical shock that we have the power. And we're going to throw darts for staff beforehand on who gets the button that night.
They'd like getting the budget passed.
Yeah, oh, don't vote our way.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we had January 3rd as tentative. Marlene had sent out an email asking whether council supported or could all make it. All 7 of you said yes, and I think Councilman Stallman was the only one who was concerned about a 4 PM start versus a 5 PM start, but you can make a 4 PM start.
Everybody else is
So,
so inclined, I'll figure out how to make it happen.
those-
So what's the new one on the 3rd? Is that where we're at?
the 3rd, yes. Spider.
Oh, yeah, I remember this
You're like my sister,
one. Didn't trouble us
taking
for
my
a
shoe
while.
off and killed it.
Oh, they're beneficial.
5, not indoors. 5 o'clock instead of 4.
5, okay.
Go with 5?
I would go for a 5 o'clock
Okay.
start.
So,
I think,
go.
yeah, I think for those racing across town to get into the meeting, you know, if we can create a little bit more flexibility, if everybody's okay with that.
So 5 to 7 for the study session and the regular meeting.
And I
Okay.
think we just keep it at a good pace and.
Okay. I think everyone knew, but just to be very direct, the flyover from Santa Fe to C-470 eastbound is open.
Good.
So that's what Councilman Taylor was referring to today when he was yesterday, excuse me, at the ribbon cutting ceremony. So it's open and fly over it. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Okay, we are now picking up on our legislative rules and procedures. We are on page 13, letter S, under parliamentary rules.
Yes, reconsideration.
Reconsideration. Any comments? Peggy, did you?
Give us a reference page or number or something.
Page 13,
Subsection S.
it's in the middle, reconsideration.
But what I was suggesting, I'm not sure if I got it out or not, was that, I think Kirsten said that instead of the within 10 days, it would be no later than the next regular meeting. The reason that I am suggesting that, requesting that, is we have rare, but real occasions when we do not have a meeting within 10 days after something. That will be happening indeed these next couple of weeks. I think it just, we can shoot for something, but I think
Does anybody have a problem with changing held within 10 days of such a meeting to within,
the next regular meeting.
to the next regular meeting?
So even if we had an intervening special session, you'd still have until the next regular meeting to do that.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
The only thing
Jim?
is, you can, if you keep it at 10 days, you can request a special meeting just to talk about the reconsideration.
Now, whether you can request it, I mean, you can request whether or not the schedules would accommodate. We seem to have a jolly good time accommodating extra meetings as is, so, I mean, we could still, it wouldn't preclude requesting that, but it just is, seems to be a smoother, fairer way to do it. And it's pretty darn rare that anybody ever requests reconsideration, but,
We've had a couple, but,
yeah, but when we do, then
yeah. Okay, show of hands for to make the change. Jim?
I'm fine with it. I
Okay.
look and see if there's anything in Roberts that gave a timeline. I don't think it does.
Okay, motion to adjourn. T, anything? Oh, I'm sorry, Phil.
What I was going to do is we had, so that we're trying to stay as close to in sequence as we can, I'll ask Kirsten, maybe she's had a chance to review items G and items Q. One is a motion to table, and the other is a motion to postpone. If she can maybe take us through those distinctions, do we need both of them or not?
So those do come from Roberts. I don't know if we follow exactly what's in Roberts rules, but the idea comes from Roberts rules. And the motion to table indefinitely allows someone to vote the issue back in for discussion versus the motion to, let's see.
Postpone
G.
indefinitely.
So
Motion to
then the subsection Q, motion to postpone indefinitely is, there's no vote to bring it back, so it's really a motion to kill it or make it die,
I don't,
speak.
are you sure?
Well, that's the way it's written in here, yes. That's the idea.
The motion to postpone indefinitely, I'm sorry. Okay.
But you don't have to keep these, so, and you can reword them.
But they are different,
They're different.
Well, so
and
we
we
don't.
have used both.
Yeah, the one I would suggest is if the motion for item Q is really a motion to kill, okay, that we don't try and use fancy words, we just say motion to kill.
Instead of motion to postpone.
To postpone indefinitely, I mean, why won't we say what we mean? Why don't we be transparent?
And I'm sorry, you guys have used this in the past? Okay. Because, I mean, obviously, I think this is a classic, to go to Kirsten's earlier comment, that this is a classic General Assembly action, because then the assembly shuts down, and so do you actually need this, I guess is.
Well, that was, my one was, I'm not sure we would ever use Q anyway, but if we're going to have Q, I'd rather have it stated pretty simply as to what it means.
Bruce?
I might take that step of just getting rid of Q. I mean, if we table it indefinitely, yeah, I guess somebody could bring it back, but the chances of that happening are nil. Or we could just kill it when they bring it back, as opposed to postpone indefinitely seems like pretty nuanced.
So I'm fine taking off Q. Yep.
I do think, though, in G,
Yeah, there's
I would
another,
leave G.
we don't have,
It's okay to leave G, because that means we just have to schedule it, or, and have the opportunity or not.
oh, I'm sorry, yes.
And
Okay.
and what I would suggest is take out Q.
Okay, everybody okay with taking out Q?
Take it out.
All right, Q's gone. Okay, so now we're back up to T, and there were no changes on that,
And I
maybe?
have something, I'm sorry, we're up to T.
Yep. We're okay? U? There were no changes on that one. V, we had some changes.
I'd like us to reconsider that. Currently, the council, according to our rules, appoints. So I still like the idea of council with recommendations from the mayor would appoint.
Well, it does say that such appointee shall be ratified by council.
I know, but there's a difference in my head. It's, if the council is essentially really doing this, I think it implies you can have some discussion during that process, as opposed to just ratifying, which makes me then think of all the things stalled at the federal level that people don't want to ratify. But it just seems to me more putting the whole council, making the whole council responsible. And for that section, and then another following section that doesn't have even the council ratifying it on that second half of that.
What would be your choice to rephrase in V?
In V, then, the council with recommendations from the mayor shall appoint board and commission liaisons and chair of any special committee. Then the council, same kind of thing in terms of special committees.
Peggy, just so I understand, so what you would, the way that would actually work is that the mayor would get the list together. The mayor would bring that list for discussion. Is that so when you say with recommendations, it's really the mayor presenting the list for council discussion?
Yeah. And then with the special committees, as we've done sometimes, right on the spot, when we have a request to appoint some people, we do it, right in session.
Okay, does anybody have any, Jim?
Well, there are times whenever, if you've got somebody you want to make sure is on a special committee, you can make that known to the mayor. And there are times that the mayor has asked the council if they've got somebody they'd like to recommend. So it just depends on how the mayor wants to operate. But the way this is written now under V, I tend to like. It gives us, the mayor can make the appointments, we ratify the appointments. If we got somebody we want to go on, I think we can suggest it to the mayor. Or if the mayor wants to ask if we got somebody we want to put on a special committee, she can do that too. I think
Well-
it gives us lots of flexibility.
I think council members ought to have the right publicly to identify whether they'd like to be on before it's kind of a done deal. I mean, that's in terms of the special committees and so forth.
And you're talking about just special committees?
Yeah, in the special committees piece.
That a council person ought to be able to express their desire to be on the special committee. I would think that most of the time let me rephrase it. My experience in the past has been that when a special committee of council is formed, for whatever it is going to involve citizens, usually there's some council person who's been pushing that idea, and that council person usually is appointed to the special committee. That's the way it's been done primarily in the past.
This does say may,
Yeah.
so it's not, does anybody else have any concerns? Okay, let's show of hands to leave it as is.
Could we take those as separate pieces?
Okay. A show of hands to leave it as is up until the sentence, the mayor may appoint special committees. Okay, that's 6. And a show of hands to leave it as is from,
Excuse me, on the second part, okay.
from the mayor may appoint special committees to the final period. Leaving it as is, raise your hands. Okay, stays as is. Anything else on V? W?
So there'd be a small change from what you have in front of you, and it'll be the mayor and mayor pro tem shall be elected by council, and then you did remove the clause in there with the presumption that the mayor pro tem will ascend to the position.
Michael?
And the question had come up of whether or not we needed this because it is in the charter. And
Well, the first provision is in the charter, but not the nomination
yeah, in
process.
the event there is a need. So, but I think the reason this was originally requested was to try to be more explicit about what that process for the election was going to be. And I feel like that we haven't completed that at this point because we had thrown one on the table, namely what follows in a lot of CML, CCI, ICMA, a lot of organizations where you are secretary treasurer, then you move to up through the ranks. So my question to the council is, do you want us to look at other procedures that are used for the election of the mayor when it's elected by the council in service of what the original request was? Or is this sufficient and you'll just work it out every 2 years? Or
Work it
whatever?
out every 2 years.
Okay. All right.
And I do have a question. Whoops.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm wondering if those should be 2 separate items so that there's no suggestion that you would elect mayor, mayor pro tem in one vote? But first you pick mayor, then you pick mayor pro tem as a separate.
If you're,
Mayor pro tem out, should you put it back in?
I am suggesting putting it back in and leaving it together. I mean, that is the way it's written in
Okay.
the
And-
charter.
So
You
it
can
would be
do-
you'd vote for your selected candidates, plural. Make a plural.
Yeah, you can fix the grammar on that. So the mayor and mayor pro tem shall be elected by council, and the grammar will be corrected. Everybody good? Okay. Bruce?
To Michael's point, though, I mean, it might, I don't have a problem with trying to figure, sort through the election process every 2 years. I guess it might be interesting to see for our own edification, if there's other ideas out there that we might want to theoretically adopt, if you've got some visibility to that, Michael.
Yeah, he can go look, but for now, let's leave it as is.
Yeah, which is fine, I'm just,
Okay. Yeah.
I'd be interested in seeing when it comes up, but I don't have any problem with leaving it.
And we did some research on it, and it's mostly a free-for-all, quite honestly, but we can use some additional work. I wanted to remind the council why we were originally even made an edit, because it was at the request of you, and so in the absence of actually having a process, just wanted to have some discussion about it. But we'll do a little bit more work, and if we find anything exciting and grouping, we'll bring back to you.
Okay.
And the correction of the grammar, as far as I know, is only adding an S to candidates at the end of the sentence, so there's nothing else to be corrected.
Got it.
Okay. Z,
Okay, so, let's see,
you just changed shall to may.
right.
Is everybody okay with that? All right.
So we've made a couple revisions to the,
Just a second, did you
Oh,
have a change on Z?
No, I'm
Okay.
just making sure we weren't getting ahead of me. Thank you.
so a couple revisions from what you have in front of you. And I think, Marlene, do you still have copies of this? Did you make copies of this, the new?
I do.
You do? So maybe you want to pass it out, I don't know. So Marlene's got the, they're up on
Yeah, we've got it
the,
up.
okay, sorry Marlene, they're up on the screen here. So all we did is we moved one of the paragraphs that's more of an introductory statement above the two subsections. So we're looking at page 15, A, legislative, and B, quasi-judicial. What we did here, and I haven't wordsmithed it at all because Wendy Hefner put it on the clerk's listserv for responses. This is a really important distinction, what your role is in the legislative capacity versus quasi-judicial. We probably can tighten this up a little bit if you want us to do that, but the concept is good, in my opinion, and we've revised the title to legislative versus quasi-judicial hearing, because your roles are so different.
So we changed the title as well, from procedures for public hearing to legislative versus quasi-judicial. And then just to emphasize, what Kirsten's put in is an opening paragraph explaining the two, and then detail A, legislative, and then on the next page is B, quasi-judicial.
My only comment, having gone through this, is that possibly as we are in meeting, it's made clear when we move from what is our typical legislative position to be quasi-judicial. It's kind of like timeout, we're now in quasi-judicial mode, and possibly even a review that turns to the city attorney to remind us we're at that stage. I wouldn't mind if we had something that says, geez, procedurally, we will make it known and make it very clear that we move from our typical mode of legislative to a quasi-judicial side.
That's a good point, and I can work with the mayor on that.
Okay, good.
Okay. So in A, Kirsten, would you comment on the part that you and I said we could strike at the end of A? Or do you want me to?
Oh, right, okay, so the last sentence of subsection A, I think this makes it more clear. We were talking about striking out after public hearing. It's a clause that starts to a later date by, I'm sorry. The council may postpone or continue a public hearing date by announcing during the public hearing the specific date, time, and place. So we'd strike out to a later, and then the clause at the time and location stated in the notice for the scheduled hearing. So Peggy, if you all are okay with that, it's just a
No,
grammatical thing that I think we
It's
can.
lower down that was going to get struck.
Right, I think if you will defer to me working that out, it really isn't a substantive change, it's just a grammatical change, and it makes it clear. Peggy can do it up there.
Leave that part in and start over here at the time and location stated in the comes out, and then this stays in.
Okay. That meet with everybody's approval. Okay.
Everybody okay? Peggy, any more on that?
Yes, it's okay.
You want to theoretically put an example here, legislative zoning, ordinance versus quasi-judicial zoning hearing or rezoning hearing, just to, might contextualize it for someone.
To give an example of the different roles?
Yeah, who's doing, a couple examples of one versus the other.
We could do an example. Do you all want examples in there?
It's just a thought,
I don't know,
just the difference between legislative and
It's
quasi-judicial.
much clearer to me now than it was 2 years ago, so it would be you. I understand that, so. But
I think this
is.
is clear.
Yeah, I can, okay.
And less
Okay,
complicated. It's less complicated.
Okay, we're good. B?
So again, this was, you had asked us to go back and capture the difference between the two proceedings, and that's what we've done.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on B?
No, but in between A and B, I did talk to Kirsten about this, and she said we could do this without putting a statement in here. If we have substantive changes on something at a public hearing, then we could postpone the vote to the next regular meeting or whenever we want, so.
And we've
not-
done that before.
And we have, so I wanted to put it in here. Kirsten said, well, we can do it, so if we don't want to put it in, I'm okay with it. I just wanted to say out loud that that's an option that we have.
Are we covered somewhere else with
It's
that?
in the parliamentary rules too,
Okay.
so I think we're okay
And
on that.
there is a
okay.
spelling mistake under legislative and quasi-judicial, starts the sentence in quasi-judicial, I can't find it up there. Decision makers are expected to apply the rules fairly whether or not they agree with them.
Oh, gotcha.
Should be, yeah, right. There we go. I was in the wrong
Okay.
spot. Couldn't find it.
So, we are on page 18. Changes / additions.
So at the last meeting, we discussed having changes be done by at least 4 members of the entire council versus a majority.
Which that really just has pertinence if a council member is not at the meeting.
Right.
Okay.
And,
Or two.
oops,
Do we need the word entire?
Yes, I think you do.
Yeah.
Do what again?
Well,
We need
Yes.
the word
Saying
Yeah.
the
entire.
entire council?
yes, otherwise you can have the quorum, and you still have council, and you have a quorum, but you then could, theoretically, 3 people could pass a change.
But you're saying by an affirmative vote of at least 4 members.
yeah.
I think the word entire is. It's 7, right?
Okay.
All right.
That's some of what's in the charter already, so.
You think it's superfluous, did you say?
Word entire.
Okay.
Okay. Show of hands, who wants to keep entire in?
Material to me.
Who wants to take it out? No. Okay, we're
And
done.
I do
Oh.
have another issue with that. And I can suggest wording, but there's no reason to suggest it if we don't think we should. I think if we're going to change or add to the rules, that it should be announced in the agenda. and not just spring up on the spur of the moment. And I think the proposed changes, at least the general proposed changes, should be in the published agenda as an attachment in the way we normally do. Because there's not a huge reason to do this lickety-split as opposed to giving citizens a chance to see these.
We'd be required to post it. Is that what you're?
Well,
Sorry.
not just have it on the, well, we can add to the agenda
Yeah.
right at a meeting,
Yeah.
but I want it to be on a posted agenda included and to have the proposed changes available the way we now have attachments to the agenda on the website. So people can see what we're talking about. Nobody, if not 3 other people support that, there's no reason to work on the wording.
Okay, show of hands for those that support a change, hate the change.
What's the issue again? I'm sorry.
She wants it to state clearly that it would be, any changes we would make to our legislative rules would be posted on an agenda.
I think that's reasonable, yeah.
I guess I would, if I may, I mean, the normal protocol of how you do business is we notice and post and do this whole thing. There's no reason that you would expect that this would occur any differently from that. I mean, I would expect, for example, when we come back, based upon Councilman Taylor's request and the council support, when we come back in 3 months, we will post it. It'll be a study session or an action item, depending upon what comes from it. So I only say that in the sense that the normal protocol of the operations of how we post and notice items, I don't know that you need to reiterate that to make this
We do-
statement here, but.
We do post items, but we don't always have an attachment showing what somebody's proposing, what the proposed changes are, or what the proposed item, the wording is on something.
But you would get it just like you had, just like this was put in there. I mean,
Bruce?
Well, I mean, it says changes may be made in any regular or special meeting, which has to be posted. That's what you said?
Yeah, we're.
So I mean, it's like, I'm not sure, it sounds like we would do it just as a matter of course, I guess, which is also what you just said, so
Well-
I'm not seeing.
But people have added, or at least requested, but we have amended agendas at the beginning of a meeting, and people have brought something to present then, as opposed to having it out there and published with the agenda as an attachment, so that people can't usually we do post them this way, but we have had agendas changed and proposals made that were not available to the public to see, who might have wanted to come down and comment during unscheduled appearances.
Well, but I guess the other side of this is if we do change something, we're going to republish the document, right? So they can see
Well,
the change.
after we've changed it, maybe they have an idea about what we want to change.
If it were to happen, it would take all 7 folks to make it happen.
For us.
Or
Oh, I'm sorry, it would take 4 of the 7.
Yeah.
Well, and if somebody wanted to make a change to the agenda, that can be voted down too. So if somebody wanted to make changes to their legislative rules and procedures and there were enough votes to support not doing that until
this in
It was
my
on
head is a transparency issue. If 4 members decide, yes, we want to go ahead and amend the agenda to change our legislative rules and procedures, and then presented right there in the meeting, the proposed changes, and 4 people supported it, in one sense, there's nothing wrong with the 4. But in the other sense, giving the citizens a chance to see what those proposed changes are before we actually have the meeting, so that if they want to contact us individually or all of us, or come and speak at an unscheduled appearance, they can't speak if they don't know what those changes are.
Okay, let's go ahead and, if there's any more discussion, Jim?
Well, I think I know where Peggy's going from, and I don't know as I have any objections, but how about if you looked at that last sentence and where it says, vote of at least 4 members of the entire council, provided the notice of changes are on the printed agenda. And I think that takes care of your concern. It's only this one item that you can't amend the agenda at the meeting to change the rules and procedures. Wasn't that what you were after?
Well, you're getting close, so let me suggest the wording that I had. So, regular special meeting of the city council, insert, for which the proposed changes have been publicly posted or posted at the same time the meeting is posted. So when the meeting's posted or the agenda's posted, the proposed changes are posted. Look, we might as well see if that resonates with anybody. Okay, so,
Okay, is everybody okay with what Peggy's changes, what she suggested? Raise your hand if you're okay with them. Okay. If you're not, raise your hand. If you're going to leave it as is. Bill, you can't abstain.
I know, I didn't vote fast enough for the first one.
Okay, so you want, okay, so institute Peggy's changes.
Well, I know, that was like, I had to
Well,
think,
no,
it was that moment.
Okay, moving on.
Marlene, do you want, is Peggy?
She's getting Peggy's written. All right, done. So, council, board, and commission liaison appointments. Council, before we discuss the appointments, I wanted to share some thinking that I had. I wanted to kind of run something past you and see what you all thought. I have here, Michael, will you pass that around? As I was looking at the handout that we got last week on the boards and commissions, and also doing some review of the council liaison board appointments, I got to thinking that this perhaps is something that we may want to, Peggy, will you take one and then pass, please? May want to treat a little differently in terms of, for at least the 4 years I've been on, and I think sometime before that, it's just been, we do it because we've always done it, we've got them because we've always had them, this is the way it works, this is what we've got. When you look at some of these rules and procedures that are in here, some of them are very, very old, some of them have been tweaked, some of them are different. We're hearing a lot of comments from a number of our boards and commissions that they do want a liaison, they don't want a liaison, they want to change the number of members, they may want to change some of the tasks that have been assigned to them. So I thought it might be a good time for this council to create a task force that would look at our boards and commissions with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb, do a little bit more in-depth look at what are we doing, why are we doing it, is it working, is it not working. This that I just handed out is just kind of my stream of consciousness on this. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm thinking that it would be somewhat like a task force where we'd have at least 2 council members. We would also include staff. I'm suggesting city manager, city attorney, city clerk, since city clerk is most involved with the boards and commissions. The task would essentially be to review the current structure, not only of our entire process, but of each of the boards and commissions, and then make recommendations back to council on ways to improve. And that may mean that we're doing, this one's great, this one needs some tweaking, whatever the case. But that it would be a process similar to kind of meeting with the chairman or the co-chair or even the entire committee, having a set of questions, getting kind of to the meat of the issue with them to help the task force come back with their recommendations. some of the areas I think that to consider, and this could be, even more, do we have what we need? Do we have some we don't need? Are we using them all to their fullest capacity? Are we underusing some? Are we overusing some? Do we need to consider any membership number adjustments? Consider changes in responsibility? I'm thinking of the Fine Arts Committee. There's been some talk about that. Council liaison, do we need a council liaison? And what is the role of that liaison? And I'm not saying anything could change. This is something I'm thinking we should look at. What defines a board, on a bigger picture, what defines a board and commission, and how does that work back into council leadership with appointments and liaisons? How do you classify or categorize other areas of council attention? We have LPS, South Metro, a Humane Society, maybe, they're a huge funder. We fund, maybe we need to have a little bit more oversight on something like that. Just throwing ideas out. Where does GLYI, South Suburban, Dr. Cog fit in? And what I'm thinking there is that on some of them we have appointees, on some of them we have liaisons, on some of them we have none, but we have someone who goes to the meetings, comes back and reports. And this could even go as far as to what depth of reporting do we give back? Do we give up a written report on LPS, or is it an oral report? And I don't know the answers to any of this, but I think that it might be a good time for us to kind of probe into some of that and put a task force in place. It kind of just starts unraveling the sweater, and maybe we knit it right back the same way it was, but I'd like to brush off maybe we have some fresher thinking, can create some new and interesting boards and commissions. In fact, even look at rewriting some of the questions that we ask these guys when they come in and we do our interviews for appointments. That's kind of where I'm at with that. I would be anxious to hear what you guys think about something like that. Peggy?
I think that sounds awfully cumbersome to get at what we want. It would seem to me if we asked each board and commission just to tell us frankly, do they want a liaison or not, and what they see as helpful with a liaison. I think we asked the licensing authority last year after one of the members said he'd like them to have a liaison, and the rest of them said, we don't want a liaison. We don't need a liaison. So I think perhaps just asking them rather than creating this other thing. And in fact, I was going to ask us tonight before we did the appointments to say the reasons that we see, some of us or all of us, of having a liaison to whatever, including things that aren't boards and commissions. I was ready to make my case for a couple of things that aren't boards and commissions. So I think we could do this, run it past them, whatever, and they could also just volunteer ideas.
Bruce?
I-
Sorry, Solomon.
No, okay. Which one? Oh, no, go ahead.
No.
Please.
I'll wait, because I was going to raise my hand, but I'll wait.
Okay, yeah, you raised your hand first.
Okay, sorry. That could have been a twitch, too. It wasn't necessarily hand raising.
Don't start twitching.
We're going to have to do Bruce and back, I think.
Bruce and bad Bruce.
That could change
That'll
regularly.
change.
No, I actually kind of thought this was a good idea because the way, even in ways that were maybe not, that aren't intuitively obvious because we've sort of siloed these things. I mean, fine arts is fine arts is fine arts. But fine arts has a communication element, and historic preservation has a communication element, and maybe library and museum have a communication element. So maybe, instead of looking at the silos, something along the lines of a cross-functional social media communication, how do we instead of forcing each committee or board to understand how they should be communicating to their potential constituents, maybe we need a social media / communications kind of board that basically is responsible for all attributes. I mean, HPB a few years ago did that True Grit deal, you know, so that was an attempted outreach to the community and interested stakeholders, and that might be more of a horizontal instead of a vertical orientation for boards. I actually thought this was sort of a slick idea, just in terms of fresh eyeballs. You know, it tends to fall into well, we've just always done it this way, so we just re-up and so forth and so on. But given change in council, change in staff, to me, I thought this was sort of a neat opportunity to reconstitute it in ways that are, you know, maybe fresh in terms of what would be of greatest benefit to the community, as opposed to just, you know, tweaking what we already have. My thought.
One of my additional thoughts on this was because I'm on the Open Space Task Force, one of the things that it's really coming from that I think has been going to be incredibly beneficial to the city and council in making decisions is to run, and Phil could chime in on this, is to run the same old stuff through a different mill, and you get different stuff, and you get a different idea, a different way of looking at it, something that maybe worked better, something that it maybe is just time to give up on. But it, so far, particularly with that group, it hasn't hurt. And I think that certainly when you see the presentation, you know, you get our report back, the benefit of that fresh eyes, new thought, different way of looking at things, you know, is probably good. Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce. Bad Bruce.
I agree right this moment I'm the bad Bruce, but I might be the good Bruce.
It'll change.
Yeah.
Very short period of time.
Couple minutes.
Santa's watching.
I think it's a great idea. I think that the boards and commissions are a very important part of our overall governmental operations and welfare of the city operations, and that apparently they haven't been looked at as you've described for a while, and now would be a great time to do it. And I like the idea that you expanded the idea. It's not just the boards and commissions, but it's really the liaisons, because there are entities that are not boards and commissions that we should have a presence on, and we should be real flexible about that and add them and whatever as they come along. And I like this idea a lot. I also think, to reflect what the other Bruce today, the good Bruce, said is there is a little bit of stovepiping and silo kinds of effects going, and maybe it's time to knock that down a little bit and relook it across the board because of things like technology and other things that suddenly might make their way in there that apply to all the boards and commissions, that this will force it to happen.
Jim?
Well, I hadn't thought about this, but I do think it's a good idea to take a look at all of this. It has been years and years since we've done any analysis of all of this. Right now, I am the person that's assigned to the C470 Coalition, Corridor Coalition Task Force, and it's one of the voting members. And we've got both voting members, we've got associate members, and I don't know, 3 different categories of membership. But Littleton gets a vote, and it's important that we have somebody there. And that needs to be council appointed me to do that. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. The other thing is that we need to have a discussion tonight about the Housing Authority. Because of the Housing Authority law, at the last meeting, Jerry and I both were there, but neither one of us voted at all on anything went on because...
I had resigned.
Did you?
I had already resigned.
Well, I didn't know if you'd officially done that or not, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's close this and then we'll get back to
Yeah,
that.
before we get through tonight, we do.
Okay, we will. Phil? Ooh.
It's okay.
A couple
Bruce,
things
three.
that are quick thoughts around some of this. One is, how how do we do this and recognize what we're really looking to leverage is people caring and their passions and their opportunities to participate. And to do it in such a way that we're nurturing as opposed to we don't want to be squashing any of that energy that comes to the fore. What we, second level thought was, how do we deal with volunteer participation? How do we deal with recognition and appreciation and that? And that becomes what I would think would be part of this mix is being in a position to be out there. And then just thinking about how to formulate all of this would certainly be, what are Littleton's interests and what do we need to be doing and kind of moving it from that place. Because I can, there's more that I would add to your thoughts of considerations than necessarily take anything away.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, so if you, well, I guess we'll just show of hands for a yes in terms of creating a boards and commissions task force. Okay. Do we have any council volunteers for that task force? Bruce?
Well, I would have it.
Well, you don't want more than two, so.
Okay.
Well,
I'll do it if there's others that want to, I'm happy to let others do it, but if you want to be on, that'd be great.
I want to do it just as a new person, because I don't have any preconceived notions. And I think
that'd be
might
good.
be helpful.
I don't see why we couldn't do three. I mean, you'd have to
Can we
be
do
posted as
three?
meetings, but nothing wrong with that.
Just
It's all
posting,
public.
posting, if that's how you,
three?
if that's how you want to do it.
Yes, you can do 3, and there's the posting. We would recommend posting even with 2, though.
You went with two? Okay, so Phil, were you interested?
Yes.
And Bruce, did you?
I'll be happy to do it if however you want to, whatever.
You
people
guys
prefer.
decide. I'm writing down names.
Now, the one part is I don't think that misses what we should be doing in the meantime, too, right?
Say it another way.
This task force doesn't mean we put a moratorium on making sure we have what has been our existing liaisons and
Well,
representations.
and that's,
that there's a transition that this group would need to think about. and
I
that
think
would be
one of
part
the
agenda.
first tasks of the task force is going to be to determine a timeline, because I have talked to Michael about this, and he's preparing to talk to Wendy about it, because we do have start posting in January, interviewing in February, placing in March, and start working in April. What will that do? Can we get this done in some sort of compressed timeline? Does that tweak that? Do we move? I don't know. So that's going to be part of the challenge.
My initial thoughts is this is going to take a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't necessarily interrupt
Wanna rush
what would
it.
be our standard operating procedures, if we want to call that, and allow this group to really be thoughtful rather than rushing it.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion
agree.
off the table.
But on the other hand, if you're going to make any changes, the appropriate time to do it is with the new appointments that comes up next spring.
And that could come at next year, thinking through a transition. I'm looking at those timeframes and when we're going to be taking a look at boards and commissions.
I mean, it is pretty
And
sharp.
in between now and then,
Yeah,
there's a
workshop.
lot of stuff that's going to be happening, and we have our workshop and other points in time, so.
Yeah. I was initially thinking the same thing, that if we could get it done in January, February, before the interviewing, but frankly, you gotta invite people to sign up for a particular board, and it may make sense to sort of shoot for this, starting in 13.
Well, the other issue is you don't have to go, you can go to them, you don't have to have them come to you.
I mean, if we've
And
got different
that shortcut the process.
orientations.
Well, and there may be some situations as the task force works through that they see there's some more urgency in certain situations than others, and then they'll need to prioritize those. I think it might be fair for council to let the boards and commissions know that we have this task force. That may be one of the first jobs of the task force too, is to notify and let them know, we have it, and these are the things we're going to be looking at, and please be, there may be some tweaking to you midterm or something like that, so that if we have to, we can, they're ready, they're prepared, we don't surprise them. But a lot of that, designing this is really going to be the task force, and I think if council would like to spend some time putting together individually some things you'd like to see come from it, similar to what we did for open space, and then we can just share those with the task force members so that they have some criteria to work off of.
I think some of that would be great. And the reason why I say being thoughtful on this is I think we are all aware that without the volunteer participation and what happens in the city, the seats that we are sitting in would be impossible. And what we need to do is take some care and to be thoughtful with this. And I think it's one of those things that let the group kind of take a look at a timeline and all the things that are there. And if you want an interim report or something like that, that can be fine. But I think trying to rush to a conclusion on this would be the wrong thing to have. It would put too many things at risk, would be my word.
Just to say that another way, it's not broken. And if the message was to leave this room that we're going to try to fix something that's broken, that would be very upsetting to people who have their hearts and souls in these boards and commissions, because that's not the issue at all. And I think by placing a fast track on it, it creates an impression that it is broken, and that's not what it is.
Good point. Bruce, did you want to serve?
Sure.
Okay, so we have Bruce Beckman, Phil, and Bruce Stallman.
And Peggy volunteer.
So we have 4?
Yeah, it's going to be posted. It's all public. So it's fine.
Legally, you can do it. It's probably better to work in groups of 3.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would suggest,
I think when you
We
have a
don't need a
majority
quorum.
working on it,
yeah.
It's a dangerous.
So
It's-
instead of
yeah.
2 votes.
well, no, just
no.
because you've got 4 then who are going to be coming back and voting on
We
it.
have a
Yeah.
majority.
And you've
I
already
think-
got a majority in it, and so you might as well just have the whole council do it. Because, I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but the point of a task force is not to have, and this isn't a comment at all about Councilman Cole, this is about the
Well, I
general
raised my
policy
hand
of
right away,
4.
too, so maybe we should just draw names.
Yeah, fine.
Draw names?
Draw names.
Do we need to decide tonight? I mean, this is something we're going to work on over the coming year.
Well,
We need to decide
doesn't-
who's the
doesn't need to be
who's on the
Yeah,
force.
I'd like, if we could, because what I would start to do then is we'd schedule a meeting and start to put together the framework on how we want to go about doing this. Individual council members at, pursuant to what the mayor just said, can start to feed those ideas in. But, if we can get started at the beginning of the year, I concur wholeheartedly with Councilman Cernanek. We don't have to rush this. But if we can start to, these are committees that are in service of something that you're working on, and so we should be looking at this, and if we can get started. But no, it's all self-imposed, Councilman, in terms of timelines.
All right, well, in all fairness, Bruce Stallman had waved up early before. I'm just, out of fairness, because I don't know drawing names, I'm not. So, are we okay with that? Be Bruce Beckman, Phil Cernanek, and Bruce Stallman on the task force?
But one of us isn't okay with it.
Well, if you guys want to change that,
What'd you say, Peggy? I didn't hear you.
I said one of us is not okay with that, because I thought I raised my hand the same time anybody else did, but doesn't matter. But I would like us, I mean, if that's the way we're going, I would like us right now maybe to identify what we see as reasons for having people on as liaisons. And I see several reasons myself, but.
well, I would suggest, and I do think we want to have that kind of input, but I would suggest that we reserve that for another time.
Well, if we're going to decide who we're appointing tonight, and which appointments we're going to make, I think it is an important issue tonight.
Jim?
Well, maybe I would suggest that all 7 council members are on the task force, and that any meeting has to have at least 4 council people there. So that not everybody feels they've got to go to every meeting. If you can't go to a meeting, that's all right, as long as there's going to be 4 council people there.
There probably needs to be some level of continuity just in order so that somebody hears the same thing from every group that they get input from.
I don't know, I'm very good at being able to hear what you said and hear what you said and hear what you said and try to make a decision out of that.
I'm sorry, I meant like if we ask the boards and commission members or chairs to come in and discuss their particular board and commission. I assume that would be multiple meetings is all I was thinking. And initially, if you had a subset group coming back with recommendations, it might be easier to function absent having the whole council show up or have to arrange schedules for that. I don't have a problem either way. I mean, I think the whole point of the task force, Jim, was to try to streamline the process, because typically when all 7 of us get involved in something, somebody's got to write a report, somebody's got to, somebody's got to make recommendations back to council, the council can either vote up or down.
If you're going to take a whole year to do this, it's not called streamline.
Well, I didn't think it was necessarily going to take a full year, but I mean, I think we can get it done in a reasonable time frame. But it's whatever people want to do is totally fine. If you want everybody involved, that's fine. If you want a subgroup to do it, that certainly is easy also.
I think having everybody involved somewhat defeats the purpose of having a task force, because you are asking people to go out and fact find and then bring back recommendations. And, throughout the year, I think there'll be a number of occasions for the task force to pop up, and so we kind of have to spread ourselves out a bit too. So I would say, and I don't think it should take a year either. I think that the longer this kind of stuff drags on, the weaker the report ends up being in the end. It's kind of a matter of how it works with everybody's schedule and how you guys can manage to fit it into your existing life.
So
We're almost done with it.
So we have 4 folks that want to serve on this, right? Is that what we have?
We have what?
4?
We have 4 people that want to serve.
Are any of the 4 willing to drop out?
I'll give them.
Now, Bruce, I think it's important, having a new council
Yeah,
member on, I think that's valuable.
I think for Bruce, the good one tonight, I would,
Which is which?
I would appreciate it if maybe you stepped aside, because I think you as Mayor Pro Tem are going to have times when I think you're going to be busy with things. That'd be helpful. And it's not that you don't have the extra time to do it.
That's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. If you've got 3 that want to do it.
You may owe me later.
Yeah, I'm happy to be an adjunct or not, just be involved at all. Yeah.
Okay. So be Peggy, Bruce, and Phil. All right. So then what I would suggest is that you guys, when you get an opportunity to get together, then to kind of start road mapping anything you need from us in terms of input or something like that. We can provide additional thoughts. If over the next couple of weeks that we're not meeting, any council member that's not on the task force that has some additional thoughts to this, things that they'd like to share with the task force,
I mean,
send them through my
as we've
phone.
done before, I see us at least having some opportunity to come back and fairly early share the scope and look for endorsement or ratification of that, so that that is one of those things that happens fairly early, so we're not far afield and we're focused.
Exactly. It might be a good idea for the task force first meeting to be with Michael, and you guys kind of organize the
Yeah, I think we want to put
Calendar.
together the whole,
Oh, yeah.
the whole thing.
Okay.
The whole thing, so, and bring it back to the council for blessing before we do anything.
The entire plan, the plan, let
Yes.
them proceed with
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so if you, yeah, we'll move to the City Council Board Commission Liaisons for 2012, 2013. And
So can I ask them what I said? It seems to me if we might have some suggestions for additional ones or the appointments themselves, it would be good for us just to articulate what we see as the reasons for having liaisons at all. And I have in my head 3, but there might be 42 others. One in mine is that we would have a liaison to the boards, commissions that we appoint unless they've requested not to, as some, whatever. A second reason is just outreach. And in my head, those would be organizations with a significant role in Littleton or connection in some way with the city, such as LPS, South Metro Denver Chamber, GLYI, possibly the Littleton Police Citizens Academy alumni, maybe some others, but some of those we already have. We have them right now and some we don't. But that's an outreach piece. And then, as Jim mentioned, we have some that we have to have, if we want to have a vote, we have to have a representative on. And we've got the Metro mayors, which usually the mayor's the one that goes to that. But anyway, identifying who the liaison is. The liaison, as I see it, is a way to get information back to council and a way to share information from council. So, and most of the ones that we've had now seem to me to fit those kinds of things.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion that we go ahead and get to the boards and commissions and then add that other stuff at another time?
I agree. And that actually, Peggy, is probably more something that the task force is going to evaluate, because we do have varying forms of activity and come back with information, and so how does that break out? How do we categorize those? What is our goal? What's our responsibility? At this point, we know what we've got right now. We know what we're working with. You all have a copy of the recommended liaison positions. Dr. Cog would be Jim Taylor, of course, and then Phil will continue as an alternate on that. Fine Arts Committee, Bruce Beckman. If anybody has a concern with these, bring it up when we mention it and we'll talk about it. Highline Canal Working Group, myself. Historic Preservation Board, Jerry. Housing Authority. Okay, Housing Authority.
I think this one could have some issues.
Okay,
I think as you can see, is this the time to talk about?
that's fine.
Okay.
I was going to outlay the issue, but.
Go ahead, please. I'll let you.
You sure?
No, you have the radio voice.
So there's a couple items here, and Dan, if I speak out of line with what has occurred, please jump in. So there's 2 issues at hand here. One is, or probably 3. One is that state law prohibits 2 elected officials from sitting on a housing authority board. So that is a legal action that we have to address, because we currently have Councilman Taylor and Councilman Valdez up until the moment of resignation, but we had 2 of them on there. The Housing Authority Board had a conversation about, I think the chair and the executive director had gone in. You can have 5 members on the board. It's grown over time to 7. There had been some discussion about should we go back to 5. Ultimately, the Housing Authority Board decided for diversity reasons, hey, we want to retain 7. When you start to fold in then the issue that Councilman Cole has raised about should we have liaisons, that type of thing, there was some discussion about having both council members withdraw from the board resigned from the board so that there was no voting council elected official on that board, and then move more in line with how you've handled other committees, which is have a liaison in there to communicate back and forth. It is a council-appointed board, similar to the licensing authority. If you wanted to completely go 180 degrees, you could be the housing authority board. I don't think anybody's suggesting that. But just in terms of the division of power, the council has made the decision to have a separate board manage the housing authority. And so to have it be cleaner in that fashion would be to have no elected officials on that board, and then have the council decide, or the mayor make a recommendation on who that liaison was going to be. There's a slight nuance that I would ask that you probably put off to the side, which is Councilman Taylor has a desire in 2013 to be on a board so he can continue on the Colorado Municipal League executive board. I think he would say that's not a reason to keep him on there, but something he wants you to be cognizant about come in 2013, so he has an opportunity to continue. But in front of you right now is, do you want to have any elected person on the Housing Authority Board, or do you want to move, or do you want to move to the standard liaisonship? I believe that the recommendation coming from the Housing Authority Board would be to not have any elected officials on, appoint 2 new members to that board, and then assign a liaison in being similar to the other committees that you have.
And I support the Housing Authority on that, if they want to have 7 members, they should have 7 members, but I don't believe that we should have a city council representative as a voting member. Liaison, yes, voting, no.
Was I accurate?
You were?
Okay.
Good job.
It's council decision.
Okay.
But
Questions?
was I accurate in the concern is about 2013 and having a spot so you can continue on CML?
The CML rules say that you either got to be elected or an appointed official of the city, and I defeated an incumbent to get to that position. If I had any idea that this was coming about, I would probably not have run at all.
How long is the term?
They're 2-year terms, so I have to run again in 2013. I will still be a member of the city council at that time, but my term will end a few months later. But if I'm on a council-appointed board, I can continue. And because right now my term on the Housing Authority ends in 2015 or 2016, somewhere along there, I was going to use that as my board to get to stay on the municipal league board.
And could you, if I may, Mayor, could the Riverfront Authority, first I think there's an issue that this is really a 2013 discussion, to the extent that you don't have to make a decision now, and that's probably not how you would want to make the decision, but Jim, just so I'm clear, the Riverfront Authority could also meet that requirement as well?
No, because my term on the Riverfront Authority ends as my term on council, because I am, again, the council appointee, voting member of the Riverfront Authority.
But they could appoint, the council in 2013 could appoint you to that seat?
If there is a vacancy in 2013 that an incumbent does not want.
Okay.
Jerry?
If we were to have a city council voting member, I would want to be that person. I'm from District 2 has issues. They've had issues with the Housing Authority. I want to work with the Housing Authority. I want to work with the property owners over there. I know the business. I'm an authority in the business. But again, if we go a voting member. I prefer that we as a council not have a voting member on the Housing Authority, however.
Bruce?
It seems to make sense to me that we do not have a voting member on the board, because as council members, we have a vote at some point in processes that relate to them. And by also having a vote on the board, we're really denying a citizen or an expert of some other nature the opportunity to be on that board and for the board to experience that. So it just seems to me it makes sense. I also know that from a representative government point of view, it's questionable why you give one citizen, one person the opportunity to influence activities with 2 votes. It just seems like it's probably not quite as strong as it would be if you said one person, one vote at one time.
Okay. Any other comments? Bruce?
I absolutely, I think your participation on that thing has been fine. Obviously, you're dedicated to it and so forth, so on. I guess the situation we've got today has to do with I think, doing the liaison. I would agree with what Councilmember Beckman said, that it just strikes me as something where we probably shouldn't have sitting council members on that particular board overtly. I think for all the right reasons, and Jerry elaborated on Jim, I think he's an excellent choice for the liaison on this thing.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and again, no disrespect to you, and I think, 13, figuring out a place to get you on the board, on a board in terms of CML activities, certainly needs to be looked at, but in the short run, I kind of think Jerry ought to be the liaison.
Question for Kirsten. Kirsten, if we would like to change the authority from a 5 to a 7 member, or,
Back.
We have 7 now.
okay, back to 5, is that your preference to go back to a 5?
No, actually, the board's preference is stay at 7.
Stay at the 7, okay.
And
Jerry?
they actually have their own legal counsel. that
Okay,
has
yeah. So
opined
we
on
don't
the
need to-
legal issue.
But even that discussion, going back to 5, was just very minimal. I think it was kind of sprung on them, some of them, so it may be something you may want to open up again.
The reason that we have 7 is because back in 2000, the housing regs changed, so we had to have a member who's being assisted by one of our programs as a board member. So that would have been one of the 5 has to be a resident. So it would have made one of them have to go off the board. So they increased it to 7. Most of the boards across the state are 5. So, but you're right. I mean, it was a discussion. A couple of the boards have only been on since I've had 7, so they're comfortable with 7.
Okay.
But
That could
5
even be
works, too.
something, if you guys wanted to, it could just be through attrition.
Right.
Okay.
I just, so a couple of procedural things. One, if the council desires that the housing authority have that conversation again, then, because if it's 5, then with the removal of Jerry and Jim, you're at 5. If the board wants 7, then I think part of, then there's the question of procedurally when would you like to fill those, and how would you like to go about filling them relative to the standard process that the council does, and is there something that you'd want to recommend differently? So I'd put on the table for the council in terms of a directive to Dan of question of the 7 again, and if it's 7, to come back with a request on how those 2 would be filled.
Right.
I think that, is everybody okay with that?
And if I can add to that too, that if it comes back to 7, I strongly encourage you to find somebody from District 2.
Hence the request on how that process would work, in terms of, do they want to do interviews and make a recommendation? Would it fall within the norm of the council doing interviews, et cetera?
Jim?
Sorry.
And they wanted to stay at 7, and they think they also expressed operating with 5 until the regular appointments are made in March.
Yeah, it has to be an odd number, so that would
Right.
still work until, if they decide to keep it at 7 to go until adjourned.
Okay. Bruce?
But I do want to add that it's really important, I think, to the city of Littleton to support Councilman Taylor in what he's been able to do in an organization that has significant impact on us. I think that's really important that we do everything we can to follow through with that kind of thing.
And that really is a 2013 discussion. Could be.
I agree with Councilmember Beckman that we should be doing the right thing on that. I think it's in the city's interest to have that representation on the CML board.
Okay. A show of hands then for, well, let's just say, is everybody, a show of hands for going to, oh boy, jeez, here we go.
Asking Valdez and Taylor to resign.
Yeah, of having no voting council members on the Housing Authority. Support. Okay, that's the second one.
Oh, sorry.
This is no voting members.
What are we doing now that's not a vote?
We are voting now on, well, we're not voting, I mean, it's just a show of hands, it's a consensus. There's no motions.
And does this require a motion at a formal meeting?
No, I think the councilman would then resign, and the core issue here is then the appointment of the liaison.
Yeah, just the
We're
next
going
question
to see a
is-
whole list come back to ratify. I'm assuming ratification is a vote.
Yeah,
And it didn't say in a resolution somewhere that we had, we're not overdoing something that we previously voted on in public session.
Well, yes, it was.
But this requires your, I guess, voluntary resignation.
That's right, that's correct.
So that's the action that occurs.
Okay.
And the part, I don't know what the board is at, but there may be some cleanup that says there will not be an appointed council member to
That's
the
true.
board. So, I mean, there's some cleanup
There
that
was
needs
a
to happen.
specific ordinance that appointed a council member as a voting member to the Housing Authority.
Okay, well, we can take a look at that, but I thought it was your bylaws, isn't it your bylaws?
Yeah, our bylaws and the state housing authority law require more than one.
Okay, so we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything.
Yeah, there's some cleanup somewhere. I don't know where it is, but there's something.
I think the point in part that I'm getting at, maybe this then is a protocol thing that we would consider adding. I thought I was hearing a few of us say that we think it's wise not to have a council member appointed to any, as a voting member to any, the council not appoint any council member as a voting member to various boards, commissions, whatever they are. And so that might be then an item for,
No, yeah, be careful when you generalize too much on that, Peggy. Like, for example,
see,
the membership on the Dr. Cog is a membership on the board, and it is a
That's-
voting position.
I'm just putting that out so we can, our
those are not liaisons either. That's
Right.
where you get into the, like
I
you on the
understand.
C-470, that's not a liaison, that's a county designate.
but Kirsten and Michael can tweak something that would reflect what we're,
Yeah, I think it goes, if I may, to Councilman Beckman's, I think, initial comment that this is about the council-created boards and commissions of your own, because these others, C-470, Dr. Cog, these other ones that are not the double voting, if you will. So yes,
But-
I hear your.
But the Riverfront Authority is not.
right.
The Riverfront Authority, I'm the appointed member, I've been on the Riverfront Authority since 1981, and by the way, that's wrong in your little booklet here, and I've got the documentation with me tonight to prove
Do you?
what it was, I really don't want to be removed from the Riverfront Authority.
And that's really not even a liaison thing, because it's not, I mean, when I think of a liaison, I think of museum, library, the riverfront, that's different.
Well,
But again,
we
that's the
need to
task force
limit-
needs to.
Right, and we need to limit this to the housing authority because it all depends on the
Yes.
organic makeup and authority for which these authorities are created. So the discussion needs to be limited to the housing authority.
So
That's the
I
safest
think
thing.
we're at the point where, does Jerry, as the council liaison to the housing authority, is
Yes.
support? Everybody thumbs up on that? Okay. All right. The library board, Bruce Beckman. Okay. Museum, Peggy.
And I would, on that, I've already indicated that I would love to continue serving on the library board, but I'm willing to let someone else do that. But I just want to make public, I do intend to go to quite a few meetings because of my academic background, my interest in libraries, and just because I'm a citizen interested in those things. So it's my understanding we can attend any thing that we want. So I just wanted people to know. It's not that I don't have confidence, it's just my own interest.
I guess my feeling there is that I respect your fondness for the library board and that's part of your passion, but I would also say that I think that it is important for the council liaison when you're in these meetings that it is not a council meeting, it is a meeting of that board, and as a liaison, most of them will have us on the agenda to make comments. The council liaison makes those comments. The, reports on council business, may answer questions, and then kind of helps with any of the protocol through the meeting if they may stumble or need some assistance. But that certainly any of the public can go to the meetings, but they're working meetings for board members, and there's an awful lot of discussion and stuff that's going on amongst the members, and you do have a council liaison, so I guess I'm a little hesitant or a little concerned that someone who's as passionate and involved for the 4 years of it, how you are going to just be able to let that go.
I haven't generally done anything other, generally, at the actual board meetings. Didn't done anything except to be there. And then to convey information back and forth. So I'm just saying, as a person, there are several things they're talking about that I'm interested in. And so I'd like to be there to hear, because they've been working on some things for a while. This is not that I don't think Bruce will be excellent as a liaison. This is just my additional interest. I go to some other board meetings occasionally too. So.
Can I add?
Jerry?
I think Peggy's skills that you bring to these meetings are incredible. But I would prefer that you step aside completely on this. I know as a citizen, as an interested citizen, you would just have to sit there on your hands and not really add to the discussion. But I think just out of due respect to fellow council persons, I think it would behoove all of us if one person just go.
So are we saying then that council members should not go to any?
I'm not saying that or proposing anything.
No, but I'm asking, because we have quite a few boards and commissions, and sometimes people do go to things that they're not liaison for. So are we saying then that we think nobody should go to something that they're not the liaison for?
No, what I had said is that it would be nice if it would, I think if a second council person goes, it really needs to be as a silent person.
But that's what I said I would do. That's all I said I would do.
If that were the case, I don't want to issue that.
Yeah.
That would be the truth.
Part of this is going back to actually the protocols we set up and what is the council liaison's responsibilities and role, and to recognize if we're attending as a citizen, recognizing that's very hard to do. Certainly, when we're interfacing with staff, they know we're council members, and it changes some of the dynamics, and to be absolutely cognizant of that. But for example, and I realize it may not fit in what we're coming to as a technical definition of liaison, but I've been the relationship responsibility to the South Suburban Board. When I went to the meetings, I was that person, but Jim would come because he's interested in the foundation and trails and that, and actually come to testify, public presentation that was there. He let me know. He said, here's the reason I'm coming. There was no confusion I think in everyone's mind as to what he was doing and being present for that public testimony and representation. And so it's not to say you never go, or when there's an open meeting, there's an opportunity to testify, but you come as a citizen rather than as a council representative.
I think the South Suburban, it's an elected board, and it's a different breed of cat. I think one of the things I look at is that we talked about how council can be intimidating, and I think one of the things with boards and commissions is that if you get a couple of council members in the board, in a board meeting, it can be a little bit more intimidating than if you just have your liaison there. And I was at a board meeting where another council member came, and the board was very concerned about that, and they didn't understand why they were there, and they acted a little bit differently, and had to talk to them afterwards and let them know. And so, I don't know. I mean, I guess my preference would be that the liaisons go, and they come back and they bring the reports. I know that, we're all interested in all of these things. This is all part of, it's kind of our cabinet. We've asked these volunteers to work hard on this, and I think each of the council members gets an opportunity to serve as the liaison to these, and that we share our information back at council. So I don't make
I'm not going to make an
rule.
issue of it. I won't go. I won't go. It's very, very painful to me to not be able to go and hear how they're progressing with projects that I think are really super. But I
Well,
won't
with
go.
the liaison who comes back with that report, I think that should satisfy that. I mean, Peggy, I can't tell you can't go. I'm just voicing
No,
my
I'm just
opinion.
saying I'm not going. And I'm not trying to make an issue of this. It seemed to me a friendly thing.
Okay, Riverfront Authority, Jim, stay on. Yeah.
Yes, and if I may, when Michael handed us this document last week, the second item in there has to do, because they went in the order in which they were formed, was the creation of the Riverfront Authority. And we have always kept track of who our members are, and I will read you the first 3 lines of what this document is. It says, Jim Collins was appointed January 6, 1981, instead of 82, for a 1-year term. Sometime in the fall of 1981, Jim Collins resigned, and Jim Taylor was appointed with a term expiring in January of 82, and were reappointed to another term expiring in 87. So it's just the 1982 date. It should really be 1981.
Okay. We'll make
I'm
that
sorry,
change.
where are you?
So this page right here having to do with the,
First page.
it's the first page after the first blue.
All right.
Did we skip museum board?
Museum Board is Peggy. Tree Committee,
I have a question.
oh, I'm sorry.
Jim, did you say that by being on the riverfront, you would meet the requirement for the CML, or was that?
Yes, I would, but my term on the Riverfront Authority, because I'm the council voting member, when my term on council ends, it also ends on the Riverfront Authority, unless the council makes a decision to change the ordinance that has a voting council member and just goes to 7 citizen members. If they did that, and you appointed me, I could continue.
And Jim, this does have you down in 81, by the way. That must be a typo that they put on that sheet.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah, it was 81 when all this happened.
Yeah, and this says 1681.
Actually, I became a member in November of 81.
Don't tell anybody.
They just skipped the 1.
That's right, in front of the 1.
Urban Drainage.
Did we get a vote on urban drainage this year?
I don't know. This was something Doug had done, and he mentioned that he had done urban drainage, and I needed to check into it. That's why it's on there.
I thought those were governor appointees.
Well, and then I read something, and it said that it was.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten the call from the governor, and I think Doug's resignation, he's not showing up to the meeting, so I have no idea.
Because
where
when I
that
was mayor, I
stands.
was not liaison
Okay.
to the urban drainage.
Okay,
We'll look into that for you.
Okay.
Mayor, and make sure.
okay.
What's
And that
going
would
on
just
with
be, if that's an appointee, then that's a different thing. Okay, so those are our primary boards and commissions. Is everybody, we're all good with all that?
We haven't finished the discussion, right? Just these lists, right? So-
Right. And then we do have the audit committee, and basically the audit committee has always been, anybody that wants to go can go. Currently, we have 5 council members that are interested in it, and it's just an internal committee. So unless anybody has any issues with that, I think, Michael?
So I talked to Doug a little bit about this, and I think because I questioned, as it says in here, discuss the purpose and role. And what I got from him was that it was a committee that was created probably a while ago when there was maybe more management issues that were coming out of the audits. His take now is that there are either none or virtually no management pieces. So I just questioned, what is the purpose? Why do we have an audit committee if, especially again, I'd come to if there's 5 people who are interested, if what we're talking about is an audit presentation by the auditors, let's just do it in the council meeting, and we can do it as a study session, and all 7 of you can partake in it. So this might be one that if the council is comfortable, that we put before the task force, bring in Doug to really talk about what's the purpose and why is it there.
One is if you're going to have the special meetings, you can, I'll withdraw, but I think taking a look at this, now that we've put in or reinstituted the possibility of study sessions, this would be a great study session opportunity, as would be my thought.
Okay.
I may be the only one around here with the history, but I think the audit committee came about in the past because of audit report that was coming forth that was not very pleasant for the city publicly, and it was a previous financial director that it was aimed at, and they decided to hand it through an audit committee instead of the full council.
And that makes sense,
Even
had that been the case.
Back in, I remember in '07, John Ostermiller and I were on it, and there was a fair amount of active negotiation with CPAs and the auditors at the time as to what exactly was going to make it in their management letter and why.
Yeah.
But like Doug Farman said, I mean, really, the last couple of years have been squeaky clean.
Well, we're getting awards now.
Yeah.
So
And
you
we
really
will
got to be
continue to
clean.
get awards.
Yeah, and if Doug's listening, scratch that squeaky clean. It limited issues.
Getting awards don't mean you're squeaky clean, though.
That is true.
I wouldn't say squeaky.
It means we have a nice
Well,
format.
let's say there have been an awful lot of management letter comments that the auditors are raising of any
Yeah.
material.
As long as we have a review of what's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and there is a requirement for the audit presentation. The auditors come in as third-party neutral parties. I think we have a requirement in the charter for rotating those auditors so that it's not the same people who've been auditing us for the last 10 or 15 years. So,
Yeah, we have an option. I think we're under a 5-year contract now.
Yeah.
We can do 3 or 5.
yeah. So I would propose that we just bring it forward, the audit forward to the full council, and we can certainly do it in a study session and allow for a full review and discussion by the full body of the council for that.
Well, having sat on this since I was first elected, and having watched subsequent members join, I can tell you the first time you read that thing, it takes a good long time, and even the 2 super dupers on council right now, when the first time they did it, they had lots and lots of questions. So I'm telling you, if we do this in a study session, we better plan on about a 6-hour meeting just to get through understanding what's what and the way things are said. I personally find it, even last year, found it very useful to go through the report with the auditors. I found one error.
So wouldn't you, though, expect that conversation happens at
In
a
a
study
6
session
in a
public?
6-hour meeting, I'm telling you. So I'm just saying
If that's what it takes, I would just put it back on, I mean, I do not use the word transparency because I think we should just be transparent, but shouldn't that conversation occur in a public
No, and
forum as a
that's,
study
and that,
session.
and that's fine, I don't object to that. I'm just saying that it is a challenge, even for the people who know how to read these things, to assimilate. And I thought the dialogue the committee had, all the times that I have been on, was really good. And that the council also still had the opportunity to read it and ask questions at regular meeting. So, I'm probably going to miss being on that if, I mean, we'll do it publicly if that's what we're doing, but I'm just saying that,
I appreciated having the opportunity to have those discussions. That's why I said I can withdraw from it if, folks want to continue with that.
As the manager, I just want to know why we're, I mean,
and even with the subcommittee that we had subcommittee sessions. I mean, we dealt with health benefits reserve separately and our self-insurance pool. We dealt with the reserves for fleet separately. I mean, even within the subgroup, there were even interest areas that and I think it doesn't preclude having.
The other issue was, what do the reserve levels need to be?
Right, and that was, we had that because of the GASB new requirements. And so there may be reasons to have some additional sessions that are in addition to the study session.
We got guys that like numbers.
no, I have no doubt, and maybe what was throwing me is the word audit committee, because if, for me, what that means is the auditors come in, they do an audit, and to Councilman Taylor's historical comment, that's what I would expect is if we're so screwed up that there needs to be some clarification or some strong direction. If what we're talking about, which is more what the two of you have just alluded to, where we're talking about reserve policy making and things, those are things that I think we would, again, put in a study session. Whatever the issue is, and have the full body talk about what do you want the reserves
To Peggy's point, though, part of it is getting up to speed on the language. And so I think if you want to call it an audit review committee or a financial report review committee or something, that's fine. But part of the conversation ends up being getting educated in terms of the language that makes up the audit report, which then precipitated some of these other conversations because there was interest in digging a little bit deeper. So that's really where it's at now. It used to be a lot more substantive in terms of internal controls.
Okay, the Littleton Fire Protection Partners Budget Committee, Bruce, I think consistency and carry-through is good on that. You've been real involved in the contract. Everybody okay with Bruce staying on that? Okay.
Going back, are we eliminating the audit committee entirely? Was that the decision we made? That it's going to come back to the council as a whole?
Well, I heard that it was going to come back as a study session.
Yeah, I would just bring it back. I mean, if there's an interest, especially for the two new members, that you want to sit down with the auditors and walk through from an educational standpoint,
I would suggest.
Yeah, then I think let's set that up for the two of you, and if anyone else wants the education. But I fully would anticipate that the discussion around the audit and any subsequent direction, the seven of you would want to have that conversation, again, separate from education.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
And I think the quarterly financial reports can go a long way to getting that involvement. So I don't know how those have been presented in the past, if we've just received them in the mail or whether we actually talked through them at all. But they're very good.
This is our first year for those.
Yeah, one of the things we did, and Bruce, you're bringing up a good point, which is it's kind of nice to have them, which is to have Doug come give us an update on that report. We did it this last year because we actually budgeted slightly an imbalance in the general fund, and we wanted to make sure, in case things happened, that we weren't just leaving it all up to staff, but you were giving us kind of a little bit of a scorecard on what's it look like.
All about that.
And I would say if we're going to have a study session regarding the audit, I would highly recommend that we look at planning something under 2 hours, that we get the audit committee or the auditors to put it in layman's terms, because if we're doing it so that the public can 6 hours of that is not going to keep the public's attention, and it's certainly not going to give them the information that our intent would be. So a Reader's Digest version of that the layman could understand would be great. If we have council reps who want to spend some deeper time on that and work with Doug, I don't have a problem with that.
And we'll go ahead and sign it too.
Yeah, I need, Phil?
Well, if we're okay with that list so far, I wanted to at least have us discuss some other relationships that we might have, or at least consider. One that might fit in the category of liaison. So would folks like to hear the list first, and then we can kind of have some discussion, because there may be more items to add to the list. So one is the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce, where I've had some role, and I've had some active participation from a number of fronts. Second is the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board. Third has been the Historic Downtown Littleton Merchants Association. Fourth is the Greater Littleton Youth Initiative. Fifth has been with the LPS Board. We've also had a designation for the 5-year model projection that Doug has prepped. And then one that I would like us to consider, if we are planning to continue to delegate to the Planning Commission items that aren't just zoning and quasi-judicial activity, such as taking a look at policy items like what do we do with parking, or how do we set up or revise or consider our PDO process, which are much more of a policy setting than they are necessarily their quasi-judicial role, that we consider a liaison, particularly in those areas.
Jerry?
And there may be others that folks want to add.
Yes. As many of you know, we used to have the BIAC committee, and I'd like to know if there's any interest in revising the BIAC.
Well, I think that's actually falls nicely into the realm of the task force to evaluate the viability of that again, because that, I would say, having served on BIAC, I would say that it needs to be redesigned so that it has a higher functionality for usefulness.
And I concur, yeah, I was on the liaison for the Planning Commission, and in the format that it wasn't my desire, but
Yeah, because you.
But I would like to have
exactly.
some sort of citizen involvement with local community, local business.
Okay, and Jim, and then Bruce, good Bruce, and then bad Bruce.
This started out, originally it was an economic development. I think it was called Economic Development Committee, and then evolved into the BIA. So maybe you go back and look at the original designation that was done of economic development. That might be better fit for what we're looking for now. I don't know.
But also, I think BIA, Business Industry Affairs Department, I think Chris is when he needs input. He has contacts in the business community that he asks for input on issues that in the past BIAC would have given him input on.
Well, what started happening with the BIAC was that they were using Chris as a resource for their report writing back to council, and it was, so what was intended to be a group to help serve Chris and help, it turned into Chris serving that group. And so what do we need, how do we get it righted again? And I think it's just perfect marriage for the.
Yeah, because when I used to go to those meetings, it was Chris really, he was the man, he did it all, including the report, and the other folks just kind of went there and added to it a little bit, but he did all the work. I don't want to see it become something where city staff is tied up almost full-time doing it, and maybe that's what, before we had it something where it was more of a citizens involvement thing. That's where I would like to see it eventually go.
Okay.
And that was in the one of the handouts, it's the Economic Advisory Committee, and you can look it back in the series of 1985. It was in here, discusses what its role was then. And I was going to make the same suggestion, we rebook that.
Perfect. Yes.
And another consideration, just to add to your list, some kind of senior citizens advisory board that would be able to concentrate on issues that matter to senior citizens and perhaps coordinate, help find ways to coordinate the various services that are available in our community, some of which aren't part of Littleton government, but are part of the overall quality of life. I think they could make a big difference to maybe look to the future too, where the gaps might be in services, because we have multi-agencies providing service. So I see some potential for that.
I think that's a great for the task force too. I like that's a great idea to flesh that out. Did you?
Well, sort of another one, again, I don't know how far afield we end up getting with some of this stuff, but there's other regional initiatives like the homelessness initiative, which what goes on in the suburbs is different than what goes on in Denver. And there's various faith-based organizations that have gotten involved from a resourcing standpoint in terms of providing shelter when the situation calls for it, but there's lousy communication networks and so on. So again, I think all this stuff sort of needs to go into the hopper with the task force and basically, let people sort of see where there's opportunity or where it gets too far afield.
What, I just didn't want to, the ones that I mentioned are existing or have been, so I don't want to, I'm not looking to toss those over to the task force. I'm saying I'd like to see something that we do to whether it's, we change the name from liaison or somehow change it. When I was with the South Suburban Board, we didn't have great relationships with all the cities, and where there wasn't communication and connection, things didn't go well. And I wouldn't want us to be in a position with some of these to not have at least a primary person that we can say is among the seven of us is someone that's out there having some interface as a face that, as opposed to necessarily things getting escalated in the wrong way, in a non-constructive way.
Let me just both close that Phil's part of it and say that I think that the conversation you guys are having is, as has been pointed out, is exactly right for the task force. I will add that part of what I will be asking the task force to consider is, once the council has gone through their goals, because that to me starts to be that long-range thing, and I talked to Councilman Beckman on the senior piece of it, is I want to make sure that we're really thinking about what it is you're trying to accomplish for the community and what is the best procedural way to get there. And a board or commission may be the way to get there. But if the council is comfortable after you get through the board, the goals and objectives, then part of what I would expect is that the task force would be looking at, are there some of the high priority goals that the council has identified that would be served, whether it's, because I'm going to throw out to that committee, just as a heads up, the use of ad hoc committees. I'm a firm believer in ad hoc committees where you're bringing people together for a very short duration for a very specific thing that they're passionate about. And I guarantee you're going to see a much larger number of people applying for it. You're also going to see names that you don't normally see. You normally see the same 10 or 12 people apply for this committee or that committee. You start to bring them together. So point is, I think there's some other pieces to Phil's comment that will be kind of that future piece of it. And then if I could recommend that we go back to Councilman Cole's discussion of what should be or have a liaison, because that starts to get to, I believe, Councilman Zernanik's thing of these, because the mayor and I did discuss, as we put together what is before you, these are the ones that are owned by, if you will, owned by the city, where they are your boards and commissions. Now we're starting to talk about what are those other components that you as a body want to make sure that you are saying, Bruce Stallman will be the person here as opposed to, I think I'd give an example of what's currently on the list of AARP. Is that something that's in the 2010 list, I think, or 2010, 2011? Is that something that this body wants to say some particular council member is the appointee versus you're just interested in it? And then it gets to what the mayor was speaking of earlier, you know, what is the link back to the full body? If you're saying you care about it, then what is the reporting mechanism back? So it may be a good time to have some of that conversation.
Well, one of my concerns with the liaison thing is that I see it as an appointment, and when I look at something like the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce, I think if you want to go to the meetings, that's great. I think if you want to bring back a report, that's great. If a couple people want to go, I don't know that I don't have a problem with anybody's involvement in that. I think it's particularly because it's also part of your other life that you have that involvement. But in terms of where council comes in and puts, you know, has liaisons, and I see a little bit of that as being reciprocal too, because if it's our board, we should be in a liaison to it because we have a responsibility to that board. But, you know, South Suburban, they don't send people to our meetings. I did have a conversation with one of the board members, and they felt that it wasn't necessary in order of keeping the communication lines open. It wasn't something that they felt would damage any of the relationship. They did not feel at that time that there was a value. They were getting, we get their minutes from all of their meetings, so we have that. That is probably something that may require additional conversation with some of the board members to get a more full-blown, and I think that may be task force conversation. Just going through the list, Hoodlum, Jim, I think that's something you are.
Well, I pay my dues to the Hoodlum Group. I don't ask for reimbursement from the city. It's $200 a year to belong to that group. And I've just, ever since I've been going, they asked me to give an update on what's happening at City Council, which I do every month. And, I'd be glad to do it. That's in my council district. That's one of the reasons why I think I have an obligation to go, or a reason to belong. It's because of that.
And I would say if another council member wanted to go to that.
Yeah, Bruce was at the last one.
And occasionally they'll have a subject that comes up that might involve another council member or something, okay? GLYI, I know Peggy has attended that, and I think that's, again, another one of those that it may not be necessary for us to appoint someone, but you continue to go.
I think there's an advantage in having a council member appointed to some of the ones that Phil identified that we have been doing. Not all, and he didn't mention AARP, but some of the ones he did mention. I think LPS, I think it's good public relations to have a council representative to that. I think since we invest in South Metro Denver Chamber, I think it's good to have a liaison to that. And I do think it's good to have one to GLYI, given its connection to both LPS and to the city in other ways, the history of that. Maybe some of the others we wouldn't need, but I think those three, the networking that goes on, that it's hard to put the finger on the value in a strict sense, I think is really valuable. Now, so maybe if Bruce would comment about whether he thinks that we really need one for LPS. I don't know.
No, I think my plan would be to continue going. I thought it was, a good idea a couple of years ago when they asked, but more was volunteered for it. And Keith Gardner from Centennial City Council shows up at most of the meetings with me. We were able to coordinate with him and support the Safe Routes to School program. So there's a lot of overlap between the constituencies of both organizations, and I think they very much appreciate it. They appreciate us showing up, and have said on more than one occasion they'd like to start sending some of their reps to our meeting.
Jim?
May I suggest that the task force take a look at, that we have liaisons for our boards and commissions that we've appointed, and that we have an outreach positions for all these others that we don't appoint. And so, because there's other things that haven't even been mentioned tonight. For example, I'm on the Transit Alliance liaison, or actually appointed for that. But
E470.
yeah, and E470. But we need to go back and do the tree committee, because we didn't do that.
Oh, tree committee's Peggy.
Oh, we did? Okay. I missed that.
And outreach may be the best word for it. I will tell you, one of the things that I felt good about is I may have interest in more areas than I can participate. And having Bruce attend the LPS board meetings, and when I was with South Suburban, it wasn't just South Suburban, it's the foundation, it's Hudson Gardens, it's that, I mean, there's a lot of Littleton that's represented in what's there. And at least I felt, if questions came up, I knew who there to talk to. It wasn't just with the board, it's also with their staff. And that was one I was willing to rotate, help in a transition so that someone could be next meeting is 5:30 tomorrow afternoon. Those were ones where I felt some comfort that there was somebody that was primary from the council that was going to take that on. So I understand what you're saying. Anyone's welcome, and other folks have attended on occasion. It's South Metro Denver Chamber, but I kind of felt, and I felt some responsibility. So if we go without a designation, I don't know if designation is the right word. It's outreach designation, then I'm going to feel a whole lot thinner than I might feel.
To South Suburban, that's your point, is that the one here?
Well, and I'm saying in these areas to say, hey, I know Jim's going to the Hoodlum meetings, or I knew Bruce was going to the LPS board meeting.
I guess I would recommend that the task force look at these, and if they're designated outreach, what does that mean? Is that a council liaison appointed? Is that a council volunteer that goes? And so they bring that back. I think if you guys enjoy going to the ones you're currently going to, I don't see any reason to change that at all at this point.
I was willing to take the South Suburban one and particularly rotate, because I wanted to rotate it when Doug was there, because I came from that board, and I said, I think having someone else on council would be a good thing. So that's one that I would put out there and say, if someone's interested, I can help on a transition for that.
Jim?
Well, I think either you're going with portfolio or you're going without. If you have a definite appointment, I think you carry a much different role and responsibility than if you're just going to attend because I want to go to the South Suburban Board meeting tomorrow night. And I think there's a big difference in that. And there's a difference in the people with whom you are meeting with as to how they look upon you as a Littleton City Councilman being there.
Okay, to wrap this up, it sounds like South Suburban, is everybody of like mind that we should have someone representing on that at this time? Phil, sounds like it's time for you to move through on that.
That was my thought. I'm quite willing, because I will not lose my institutional knowledge that I come with. So that's not going to evaporate very quickly. But it's there, and I know that Kay had talked about a structure that would have been somewhat different than just going to their board meetings, which would involve a lunch meeting once a month with 2 of their board members, 2 staff from South Suburban, 2 staff from the city, and two council members, and I thought that was going to be very heavy. And so this continuing in a outreach designate position, I thought was going to be a lot more efficient for city staff, South Suburban staff, council, and board.
Okay, do we have anybody who would like to do, what are the meeting times on South Suburban?
Typically, they're twice a month on Wednesdays.
Starting at
Generally
5?
start at 5:30. Sometimes they move it up, sometimes they move it later.
Okay.
And my agreement with the board was I would leave at 8:30 at the latest.
Okay, and maybe you should go into an exec. Will they go into execs early? Okay.
Their
yeah.
exec process has changed.
Oh, okay.
So it could be early, it could be late.
Is anybody interested?
I did it for years before he did, so I don't think I want to do it again. Not right now, anyway.
It's working with a group that's focused on farms.
Okay. Well, do you want to continue to go?
All right, Phil, thank you. So, you know, it's the one that, you know,
Okay. It's a tough time, I think, for a lot of us too, and it's kind of a heavy schedule, as you had indicated. Maybe what we do is the task force looks at a way that we can continue to have some sort of presence and communication back and forth, and I mean, that might, you know, that's just adding to the list of task force things to work on. The other, is there any other issues with any of the other ones that were brought up, I think?
The only one I expressed some interest to Doug, and if we're going to continue the exercise on the 5-year projecting model, recognizing that's a seasonal item, wouldn't mind having some interface to that. I realize that's not a board commission, but you know that was on our list previously. It's not to preclude any other involvements, Mr. Stallman. I'm not looking for you to hand that off. It is that you know, I spend a lot of time doing projections anyway.
I think that's fine. I think if council doesn't object, that's kind of a volunteer board, and, or, you know.
Yeah, I worked with Doug on it last time we did one, by virtue of having some tools that are pretty specialized in that regard for computer analysis purposes.
I'm not going to bring the tools.
No, okay.
And he's going to have to do that work. I'll bring ideas.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it with you if there's an interest.
I would just second Peg. I would actually suggest that the planning commission that you had mentioned, that goes to the task force to flush out how that would look.
Well, and just to make sure, it's not for what I would call the core responsibilities of the planning commission and what they're doing. Is if we use the planning commission in lieu of any other ad hoc group to take a look at comp plan review or PDO process or parking issues, things that end up being issues that come back to council other than in a quasi-judicial role. Just my experience over the past 2 years is we could have benefited by having a little more of a communication back and forth.
Peggy and then Jim.
Well, I'd like to see us actually have liaisons to LPS, DLYI, and South Central Denver Chamber. And again, part of it's the portfolio thing, whatever, maybe some others, but I would like us to not wait for the task force, but to go ahead at least now and have those three. And you're on the Transit Alliance too, right? So those four.
We prefer to continue.
Okay, and Peggy, I'm assuming you want to do GLYI?
Yeah.
And I would just say we keep it as it is right now. You guys are going and you're bringing back reports, and I think that's, as opposed to making a decision now to make it liaisons, I really would like to see, we won't lose the attendance at those, but I think we have to make some decision about what is a liaison and what is something else, and what is something else. But,
I still think it's part of what Jim says, having that anointment, if you will, whatever it is. We could make it a tentative kind of thing, I mean, a temporary, whatever, but I still think it's important. When Jose, for example, for the last 4 years was GRYI council rep, people really appreciated having a city council person as a rep there. Not just somebody there, because I was there, but they really appreciated having that rep. And I think the same with the LPS and probably the chamber. I don't know if the chamber feels so warm and fuzzy, but the other two I know really appreciate that designation.
okay, go ahead, Jim.
One other thing that I think Kirsten may need to take a look at is having city council being involved at all with anything, liaisoning with anything to do with the planning commission, because I think there's certain elements of state law that governs that.
That's right. So we'll look at that, and also I think it's a good idea to do a lot of this through your task force so we can make sure that all of what you would do as far as an appointment is covered under our insurance, and so we'll take a look at all of that, and specifically planning commission and the quasi-judicial hearing issue.
So if, go ahead, Michael.
I would just say that if, one thing that you might want to come back, and maybe this ties in with what Kirsten just said, but we've got a council liaison role, which is really, as I look at it fairly quickly here, intended to be for the council-created boards and commissions. And maybe if there is another set that acknowledges the outreach that gives you that, I can't think of your word, but I remember anointment, and that you create a separate set of protocols for that is possibly different than your own internal City of Littleton pieces, because I do think it's a different role and responsibility than for your own.
And I
So,
think, yeah, we'll work
create those.
towards that, the fact that we don't have it tonight or next week, but we can still have people attending. But I think we can work towards that. I'd just as soon not vote on creating new liaisons this evening, is everybody right?
We can do that later.
Okay.
So can I ask a question, clarification? So we have on the task force, the people who are going to serve on that and with Michael. So we have somebody responsible. Michael, are you going to be calling that group
Yep.
together? And,
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah, we'll schedule, it'll be probably after the new year before we bring folks
we can
together.
come to Hawaii.
Right.
That's, I want to be on it now. Okay, so we're moving
It's called
on.
a vacation for a reason.
Yeah. Are we done with liaison boards and commissions? Move on to the next subject. I think we can get through these fairly quickly. Televised meetings, Michael, did you?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was looking at breakfast.
Keep up.
No, all right. So Peggy had raised the question of televised meetings specifically related to these. And what I had talked to the mayor about was, rather than discussing it in the context of a particular meeting, should we televise it or should we not, it seems like we've got 2 rooms here which are wired for televising. And so the base assumption would be, if the council's comfortable with it from, I guess it's getting late, so from a protocol standpoint or from a norm operating procedure would be, we would televise something if it's in either of these 2 rooms. If we don't fit in these rooms or it doesn't lend itself, we don't have transport capability, we don't have the money to go and put these elsewhere, but we would just basically make sure that we take good minutes, et cetera, but if they're held in here, the cameras would be turned on or next door. It just, again, as a norm, if you want to do something different, we can certainly do that, but.
Seems like the only other place we generally have had meetings is the museum, so I guess the question is, with PEG fund money, is it feasible to wire the big room over to the meeting room in the museum for the TV cameras?
It probably is. I can't speak to whether or not there's, I mean, at some point, if the PEG fund has enough money, the answer obviously is yes, because that's an appropriate use of PEG money. I can't speak to whether there's, we just spent, I think, $100,000 upgrading to high def so you can see your face clearly. So we can certainly.
No, you didn't tell us we went to high def.
I don't know that we really did, but I know they're new cameras, and so I assume.
Uh-oh.
But if that was something the council was interested in, we get, as we look at the 2013 budget or beyond, we could certainly add that into it. It seemed like the conversation was getting a little mired in particular meetings as opposed to the standard protocol or operating norms that we would have that if we're in here, the camera's on.
Now, you said meetings in this room. We have breakfast meetings in this room. Are you intending to televise the breakfast meetings?
If you, we'd have to, obviously we have Doug as a contract employee.
Right.
There's some logistical issues that he has, but that,
I mean, some of those,
why you wouldn't.
those outreach meetings, but I don't want folks that are participating, like large businesses and sharing some of their issues that feel like that's there. I mean, it's more meant to be an informal discussion. I wouldn't want to put that kind of
So do we want
chemistry.
Do we want to limit it to study sessions and the council meetings, study sessions, special meetings?
Studies.
And regular meetings?
We do board and commission interviews on television too.
Which would be a special, probably posted as a special meeting of the council.
Yeah.
Right?
But we have,
No, we don't.
unless we repeal it, we have a motion from 4 years ago that we do televise the things that you just said. I mean, and it includes also the planning commission, regular and study sessions and so forth. So unless we would change that, that's just ongoing. But I do have a question. Is it I mean, we have some kind of capability in the police training room, or whatever we call the room up there,
Keep going.
for videoing. Can we,
That's in that room,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So, for example, we could potentially video a meeting from there?
Are you saying it's closed circuit?
Well, my
understand
understanding
the
of
question.
that equipment is that I'm sorry. Oh, well, you might know, Bruce.
It's set up to video, there is a mobile video conferencing unit that can be moved from space to space in the police department area, but it is only a video conference. It is very limited. It is not something that would meet the requirements of televising a meeting, right, with the cameras and the
I
whole
guess, and that's why I didn't understand what the question was.
So then my question would be, could we not wire that so that it could be used for workshop?
Oh, because you're saying it's a larger room.
Right.
Okay.
It could be used for workshop and then potentially be used to broadcast meetings, training sessions that we could make more money off of with the police or other groups that do training.
Yeah, anything's possible. I guess the question had come up about televising the council meetings, and we've got to get, rather than talking about the individual meetings, which we're now talking about, I was trying to figure out, was there a standard, if we were in this room, did we turn the cameras on, assuming that we had staff to do it? It sounds like from Councilman Sinanek, there are some times when we may not want to, they're all public meetings, so people can come in here. It's a question of how.
I think the general rule of thumb has been our regular meetings, anytime we meet in there, the cameras are on, and I think when we're in here on a work or a study session or something like that, or if there's something that is, when we do our board and commission interviews, we do it, but other than that, yeah. And then,
It's a cost consideration, too.
yeah, it is, because of Doug's time.
But I still
So-
like the workshop televised, which would mean we'd have to
Well,
have it.
we're not going to talk about that
I
tonight.
know, I'm just saying that future discussions.
Okay.
And
keep
we're
that-
going to talk about the whole concept of the workshop at another time, so don't.
Okay. All right, are we okay on all that, the televised?
Clear,
Okay,
thank
next thing is, this was on my list, would love to hear from you as to what you would prefer your title be as we're having meetings and I call on you, and I've been using first names. Would you prefer me use council member last name? What, I want to do what you guys would think are most comfortable with. First names are a little casual, it's easier, but we do have two Bruces, so in here, in there, different.
Steve?
What would be, yeah.
What is your pet?
So I want to do what's
another Michael?
preferred.
No, is that what your middle name is? Oh,
What is your name?
Esteemed council member and Sherpa.
So we could work that.
Do you have a preference?
I have a 56, 57-member board of directors at Dr. Cogg, and I call everybody by their first name.
I'm fine with first names. I call my doctor by his first name.
Okay,
First name's fine.
okay. Okay, thank you. Council outreach schedule, which I think we have the breakfast schedule, but
and that's really
that
what.
would be our outreach schedule.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the breakfast discussion.
So what we've got is, everybody have this one, the current city council breakfast schedule, and then underneath it, 2012 group suggestions.
Hold on.
Everybody got that? Here, Peggy, I think it's there. It just got handed out tonight,
Yeah.
right? Marlon?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not dated, though.
No,
So if I get another one, I don't know if it's.
yeah, exactly. So if everybody wants to take a couple minutes to look over that, and then we'll discuss the 2012 suggestions.
And
Oh, and I don't know that we want to get deep into what days and stuff. I think we leave that to the staff to determine. Although there has been a request to change it from the third Thursday due to a conflict with key staff having a sewer meeting. So I think we should consider moving that.
But that gets us out on time. That's
Well, but
the
you know what?
advantage.
You know, they always have to leave about 10 minutes early.
I know.
So, but you know, Doug was good at 9 o'clock, we're done, and I intend to continue that. It shows respect for everybody that's there. They're stealing time out of their workday too, so.
But what if we do them on the second Thursday?
Yeah, I think
Could I suggest, we were scheduled to go into an executive session at 10
10.
tonight, that we have an opportunity to look at this and react to it next week, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever we do it.
Okay, yeah, I think that sounds good.
Next year?
Okay, so we will now, paperless council packets.
Yeah, so
5 minutes?
3. I just wanted to let you, give you guys a brief update on where we're at. So, you know, Kirsten has done some work along with Ken and Wendy looking at the emails. You all know we've been discussing the email protocol with you, as well as e-discovery. I think Kirsten had some communication with you about that. So essentially what we are looking at doing, we were in that, we did a quick analysis of should we let the individual desires of 7 council members drive that, or there's some legal parameters that we thought should drive that. And we turned to the legal side of it basically to say we've just gone through a core request on our emails. Kirsten's done a bunch of research relative to e-discovery along with Ken, and so looking at that, saying, okay, emails are going to be housed on the city server. We are going to give you a piece of technology that for you to do your government business on. And what that is, we don't know yet. So we've made some strides in this case. Now we're starting to look at the user side of this, basically saying, okay, what software would we use, Adobe as an example, where you can go in, read the packet, and make those comments, make your notes on, paragraph 3, you don't like it, or whatever your comment would be. How do you, in the most easiest fashion for you, do that? So the staff's now starting to look at the user side of it. We hope to come to you in early January with some alternatives. We're probably looking at either a tablet technology or a laptop technology for you to look at, and then we'll do some quick training so you guys can talk about what particular technology you like more than others.
Glad you used the word quick.
Yeah, no, well, but just know that it's moving forward, and there's other, we just had 2 large files, PowerPoint presentations, I think they were, and so we've got staff looking at, is there a way that we can house those in a particular place so we're not sending gargantuan emails to you, but there's a way that you can go, and Ken's probably got much more appropriate terminology than I'm using, but essentially a place where you go and find in the repository all of the files that you're looking for. So just know it's coming. We've made some initial determinations based upon the legal side of it, which will have some implications to some of you. I think virtually none for the mayor because she uses her email, or she uses the city email solely for that. And so it's coming, and within the next 30 to 60 days, we should be ready to roll out some options for you. Hopefully closer to 30.
Learning curve.
Yeah.
CML, the webinar tomorrow at noon will provide some insight, right, for those of us who
I
haven't
have
done
no
this.
clue whether that
Do you-
will provide.
No, I'm not clear on exactly what they're going to cover, I know, but YouTube is going to have her show.
Right?
Yeah.
We go to
Yeah.
her office.
I mean, yeah, they'll probably talk at a fairly general level about paperless packets and the benefits of it and the different technologies that are there. And yeah, it certainly might offer some insight for it, but I think we're certainly moving down.
Bruce
that
can't bring
direction.
that big old huge pile there, like.
He can print to his heart's content.
In front of you.
This is just.
Ken, you're looking.
I know, we didn't know how much you were gonna get, so I know it's a large binder.
No, I had to get a tab. Trust me.
Okay, that actually concludes this meeting. We'll be going into exec, as we mentioned earlier, and I want to thank staff and in particular Kirsten for all the work on this and for all the council. A lot of hard work went into this, a lot of thinking, a lot of time. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work and diligence on this.
And so Jane?
We've wrapped up university except for 4 hours of legal yet.
No.
We haven't-
No, you haven't done goals and objectives.
No, well, that's fine.
Yeah, so breakfast schedule and goals and objectives.
Okay, we're adjourned.